Welcome to Module 2, Learning Management Systems and Virtual Learning Environments. In this module, we hope to explore functionality and the application of using LMS and VLE environments in K-12 virtual education. We also hope to help you get a better sense of how you may want to use these environments in your own teaching, where you may be able to access those environments for free, and then how you can use them particularly to help your students socially interact and collaborate in your courses. Now, in general, learning management systems and virtual learning environments are fairly similar. The difference can lay in some of the capabilities that you'll find in each of those and the kinds of technologies that call themselves those environments, the specific brands. But in general, we can think of LMS and VLE capabilities as being similar, if not the same. And those capabilities in those environments include course administration and logistics tools. So this is where it becomes your physical classroom in the online world. Especially if you're teaching entirely virtual education, you need to have a space where students can be managed or administered. It's kind of like, what chairs do students sit in, and how are you directing them through the lessons each day? That's what an LMS or a VLE can provide. It also gives you a very easily accessible environment for your students to get content associated with their courses. This becomes important because using an LMS or a VLE can also help you protect yourself in using content appropriately. It can limit who you distribute your content to and in what duration of time you distribute that content, and that way, most often, you can use pretty much any kind of content you wish, as long as you've been aware of the kinds of permissions available. It allows you to communicate and collaborate with your students, both on course information, but then also around key topics, either prior or after a lesson, helping them prepare for exams or assignments, and we'll talk about that, or even encouraging group work. You can do all of that in that environment. It allows you to assess students. You can have them submit work. You can have them take quizzes and tests. You can even have them do peer assessment if you wish in many LMS and VLE environments. And it can help you take your course and map it to specific outcomes. This becomes important particularly in the US or in other countries where there are curriculum mandates for how you choose to align your content. Or if your school or district has mandates of how you align your content, you can map activities, experiences, even assessment questions specifically to outcomes. And then finally, this is a great place for you to monitor your student progress. So you can not only see when they're logging in and what they're doing, but how are they working through those materials. And depending on how you set a course up, you can get some very good information very early on in the course about how well that student may or may not perform and how you may want to intervene in that student's learning experience. Finally, in some LMS environments and VLE environments, students can also sign up for personalized notifications or ways to get information to them about the course, so they're almost constantly online. And I say that in the sense that they're not always in the course, but they're always being notified in the way they wish to be notified of what they should be doing associated with that course. And that can be really helpful to keep students engaged and not have to worry about getting them to come back to your virtual course. Now, LMS environments also take very seriously data privacy and security. This is another good thing about using one of these environments to help support your virtual classroom, because you don't have to necessarily worry about who's getting access, who's using that data, and how are they using that data in your course environment, because these environments are specific for education uses. And the companies behind them care very strongly about how secure and private that data is, or at least in most cases, that is the truth. So I encourage you to think about where you're housing your students and how you might use an LMS and VLE to do that in just a way to make sure that students are getting access to what they're supposed to be getting access to and that their data is secure and private. Now, there are some extended capabilities with LMS and VLE environments as well. And these include the integration of third-party tools. So in a lot of cases, some of the technologies that we'll talk about further on in this course, you can actually plug them into an LMS or a VLE, especially if it doesn't already have that technology or a very good version of that technology. And you can make these very robust. I want to say custom, but they're not really custom because it doesn't take a lot of work to do this. But you can make a very robust custom environment for students to be learning specifically in your course. For those of you that aren't familiar with this, there is a website out there. It's called Edu App Center, and that website will actually list various third-party tools that work in many of the major LMS and VLE providers. So it's a good place to check out, hey, is there something I can plug into my environment if I would like to? You also can have LMS and VLE environments that have your courses have not only private environments where your students' data and privacy is secure, but public environments where you can publish some of your own lessons or teaching or learning or share them with other instructors. And that can be valuable, but not necessarily a required capability, but something to look at. And then finally, depending on the LMS and VLE, you may have not only access to the data in your course, but access to it in an aggregate fashion and great reports that you can use in an aggregate fashion that can help you get a sense of your overall approach to the teaching and the course design that you've created and how well students in aggregate are performing, even compared to other students in your school, if you wish, on the particular skills and tasks that are set forth. Finally, you may be interested in some LMS and VLE environments that provide parental access so that students can have parents and guardians be able to monitor their work or see what's due or get notifications or announcements related to what their child's work is. And that can help deepen the engagement not only with parents but even within the school itself. Now, some major providers. This list is not exclusive. This is a list of just the more popular tools out there that people are using in K-12 virtual education. There's a lot more, and in fact, there's not a whole lot of international products listed on this. Most of these are US-based, so I encourage you in the discussions to share some of your own favorite country-specific LMS or VLE providers as well. But this list includes things like Google Classroom, which came out in 2014, although parts of it have been coming out since 2005. And then some of the for-cost, but they have free environments, tools like a Blackboard, a Canvas, a Desire to Learn, a Schoology. There's Edmodo and Moodle, which were driven by being free. And even some of the younger tools like a Haiku. And then one of the more popular international products that I am aware of is Fronter, but there's lots more. And so I encourage you to go check those out. And not only do I encourage you to check them out, but many of those tools have completely free options for individual teachers. In fact, many of them let you go sign up as a teacher, enroll your students, and run your course just as if your district or your school had a license to it. And you can use it in a great way to either pilot or experiment with that or continually support your virtual education, especially if you're in an environment where you don't have a license to one of these technologies within your school or district. Now, how do you pick which one to use? LMS and VLEs are generally similar in their capabilities, as I talked about at the beginning, but there are some key differentials that can help you pick which one you want to use. First and foremost, your school may have a license. You may or may not be aware of that, but if your school does have a license, clearly you want to be able to use a locked down environment for your students that's very specific to your school. So that's a great way to use it. However, I do know a number of teachers that the school may have a license for one technology, but they want to use a different one that's free, and many of those are very secure because they want to play around with a different set of tools. So, it may not always be the one you go with, but it's definitely a good one to go with. There's probably also training resources available at your school or district associated with it that can be really helpful as you use it. You should look into ease of use, and I'm going to say ease of use is relative. Most people would probably disagree with that, but I do believe what's easy for one person may not be easy for another, and may not be easy for your students. So you want to think ease of use for you as the administrator of that environment, but then you also want to think ease of use for your students. What's going to feel most comfortable for them so they're not wrapped up in how to use the LMS or VLE, but instead in the learning. You also want to think about what your preferred interface is. And this is different from ease of use. We all have a style and a way we want to present our courses and our content and our community that we're having students learn in. I know my course right now is very different than probably many of the other courses that you've taken. Well, in that case, we all have that preferred interface, and you want to look at the LMS and VLE environments to see which one will allow for you to design courses in the way you wish, and it's that preferred interface, that look and feel. And then finally, you want to make sure it's applicable to your students. So some technologies are better for higher education. Some learning management systems and VLEs were driven towards higher ed. Some have been customized for K-12. Some were driven by K-12. Some are better for just traditional classes. Others are better for blended or virtual environments. You just want to play around with them and see, okay, which feels most applicable to my students? And then go look at resources out there and see who's using those technologies and how they may be similar in their use to how you will use them with your students. This is particularly important if you're going to use an LMS or a VLE for young students. If you're looking at ages 5 to 10, you want to think about which ones allow for big icons, big print, lots of colors, visuals, and let you do that very easily for students because students are interacting a little bit differently at a young age. You also want to think about which ones have mobile tools. So making sure that if your students are tablet users or phone users, because that's an important part of your virtual program, that the LMS or VLE supports a tablet or a phone. And then finally, you want to make sure that that LMS or VLE has the appropriate country and language support. Many of them will allow you to create courses in different languages, have students pick the language that they take their course in, but you want to make sure your language is supported, people in your country are using it or can use it, and that it is appropriate in even its language, not just its translated language, but how people interact. Are assessments called assessments? Is content called content? Can you change that? Asking yourselves those kinds of questions is important when you're picking because it helps you make sure that your environment is most relative to your students. And last, and probably most important, you want to look at the kinds of resources that the company provides, that the community provides, that maybe even your school or district provides, so that you can get started as easy as possible, you have help throughout the process, and that your students can get access to help where they need it. Now, in thinking about using a learning management system or a VLE, let's take a moment to reflect on some of the things that we just discussed. Your school, and this is a hypothetical as usual, your school does not have a centralized license, so you're out there looking at technologies. I challenge you to go to 3 of those technologies on the list that we shared, the particular providers, and just sign up for a free course. In many cases, you can opt out of marketing, so you're not going to get spammed by those providers, but what you can do is take a look at sample courses and how you may want to use those environments in your own settings. This could also be a great way, let's say your district does have a license or your school does have a license, check it out if you've never used it and investigate how you might create your own virtual class within that LMS and VLE environment. Also take a look at what tools may be missing, because as we talk about tools moving forward in this course, there may be categories of tools that you specifically want to look into that you want to bring into your current LMS or VLE environment.